My name is Victor Koh and I'm from Singapore. I wish to talk about the Singapore experience towards development. I was born at the time when Singapore was a British colony and we sing God Save the King. And then the king died and we have a new queen, Queen of England, and we were taught to sing God Save the Queen. My birth certificate was British subject. So Singapore was a colony of Great Britain. And like many other colonies, we were involved in the Second World War. And Singapore was a totally devastated country because Singapore was the Far East Naval Base of Great Britain. Then, in the late 50s, early 60s, Singapore was caught up with all the other Commonwealth countries seeking for independence. And in 1963, Singapore was granted independence from Great Britain, where 4 colonies, Malaya, Sabah, Sarawak, and Singapore, was allowed to have independence, but on the condition that we come together as a federation of states, because all these 4 colonies were too small and to survive in the global community. So in 1963, Singapore was part of the other 3 colonies, and the country of Malaysia was born. So we were excited. We were part of this new nation. We are founding a nation like the other 3. And there was so much optimism and excitement. But for 2 years, the leaders of all these 4 communities, colonies, we got together and we began to dream about the destination of this new nation. We begin to envision what this new nation can be or can become, where we want to go. And so we begin to discuss the vision and the values of this new nation. We talk about a nation that is based on justice, equality, integrity, and meritocracy. When Malaysia was founded in 1963, the distribution of the ethnic population, where it was basically about 50-50 between people of Malay ethnic descendants and those of Chinese descendants. In Singapore, we have a special situation, just like all the other 4 colonies have their own special ethnic distribution. We are 76% of Chinese descent, and then 15% of Malay descent, 7% of Indian descent, and 2% Arabs and Europeans. So we begin to discuss what kind of nation we want. When we talk about justice, everyone agrees, but there was a group that say they need to be above the common law because they are people of royal blood. Or they have, we have kings just like you have chiefs here. They came from small kings or regional kings, and they want special legal privileges. We said that's very hard to start a new nation. We say equality. They say, yeah, we should be equal. But others say we need to be more equal than the other people. We say that's not equality, that's animal farm. And so we say if it's truly there's equality on in this nation, this new nation, then we must all enjoy the same privileges and responsibilities. Then when we come to even the whole idea of meritocracy, it was interpreted differently, because the old ways was about, nepotism. All your family and relatives get all the good jobs. And then cronyism. All your cronies, your friends, they get the good jobs. So we say a nation cannot be run that way. Meritocracy means people who are qualified, people who have the qualification, the merit, they should be the one to be selected. So for 2 years we argued, we debated in Parliament these basic pillars that form our core values. And finally, with so much debate, we could not come to an agreement. After 2 years, in 1965, we were shown the door. We were asked to leave Malaysia. Now, that was a very, very traumatic time for us. I remember our founding Prime Minister, Dr. Lee Kuan Yew, he cried before us, before the nation. The nation cried. I was there. I cried also. Because everyone predicted our demise. Everyone predicted our doom. Because Singapore was a small island nation. At that time, it was only 500 over square kilometers. And we don't have any natural resources. All we have is a deep harbor. It's a rock island. We don't have a hinterland. We don't have raw materials. We don't even have drinking water. During the time of the British, there were treaties arranged where the southern tip of Malaya will supply their raw water and sell it to us. We had to pay with cash. And so that's how we started. Everyone predicted a very gloomy picture. They see Singapore is doomed to fail, to go into oblivion, and we will have no chance of succeeding. At that time, we have less than 2 million people. So if you look at Singapore, it's just 5 degrees north of the equator. And it's a place where we have a lot of rain, and we have a lot of sunshine also, but we are very limited in our land area and no resources. So that's how we start. If you look at the picture of Singapore, the satellite picture today, you see that from east to west, we are only 43 kilometers long. From north to south, we are only 23 kilometers long. So this is a small place. Now I want to show you some pictures. On the picture, on the top, on the left-hand side, you see how Singapore looked like when we gained independence. Singapore was a very poor country. Everywhere you look, north, south, anywhere you turn, you see slums everywhere. People were poor. All your friends, your classmates, your neighbors, they're all poor. Everyone is poor. And the reason is because we came out of the Second World War, totally devastated. We came out from the ashes of the war. Singapore was the Far East Naval Base of Great Britain. So when war broke out, of course the Japanese Air Force, rained bombs onto our little island all the time. So all our infrastructure, homes, many people died. Infrastructure destroyed. So people live in slum. It was very, very normal. But on the top right-hand side, you see the Singapore today. There is no more slum, not even one slum in Singapore. You can only see that in a museum. Singapore today, people live in modern housing, all right, with all the modern amenities and clean homes and everything they need in all the community is in place. There's place for health, there's place for education, commercial district, markets, banks, and transportation was very good. We have fast train, we have modern buses that take people around the community or into the city area. At the bottom left, you see the picture of the central business district of Singapore. This is very important. There's a river right cut through it. It's called the Singapore River. In those days, merchant ships, they come from the ocean and they berth right by the river, and cargo is unloaded and loaded. And then this is the trading port in Singapore, the lifeblood. Look at the central business district today. It's a modern metropolis. Okay, we have kept some of the old buildings for monument, for heritage to remember where we came from. But today it is a modern international city. So the situation after the Second World War, when Singapore started, the socio-economic condition was very, very difficult. Okay, people live in abject poverty, and the economy was very, very low. In those days, our per capita income was barely $200, the average income for Singaporean a year. But today, we are one of the highest per capita income in the world. Our per capita income is about $60,000 a year. And that is based on 5.5 million people, our population. In reality, Singapore has only 4 million citizens and 1.5 million foreigners who are legally welcome to work in Singapore. So if you take the GDP, our GDP last year has passed about over $310 billion. And if you divide that by 4 million people, the GDP per capita is over $75,000 a year per person. But if you take the whole 5.5 million plus the 1.5 million foreigners in there, then our GDP is close to $60,000 a year. That's very high. Poverty at that time, there was abject poverty everywhere. Today, we have no poverty. And we were able, there's still a few people, but they are insignificant. Some of them is because of their, there's some medical situation, or they were unfortunate accident, the spouse died. But in those days, poverty was the norm. Today, we were able to solve that poverty problem. Most of the Singaporeans are middle-income people, and those who have any misfortune, because of some illness or accidental death, the government steps in with very generous social welfare. We take care of our people. There's no beggars in Singapore today. In fact, begging is illegal. And very low crime, because everybody has a job. We have actually more jobs than there are Singaporeans. Today, we have to invite 1.5 million foreigners to work in Singapore, because there are more jobs than there are Singaporeans to take up those jobs. And we are colorblind. We welcome people from all over the world to work in Singapore based on their qualification, of course, good character, and able to work, good chemistry, able to work with other people in a team situation. And of course, we look for their competency, their skills, their abilities, and they are welcome to work in Singapore. Another condition after the Second World War was this very serious unemployment problem. We have massive unemployment, as I mentioned. People have some dignity. They, rather than steal and rob or cheat, they will work for a little wage. Instead of having your bullock and your horse or your cow to pull your cart, the men offer themselves to be the one that pull the cart. They will carry anything you want at the marketplace just to earn some money. It was very normal for people not to have 3 square meals a day. And if you have 3 square meals a day, you're considered a very fortunate person. So people were always seeking for employment. In that kind of environment, foreign investment was negligent. There was nothing much to speak about foreign investment. Who wants to come to a place like that? When it comes to education, although the British left behind a legacy of a good educational system. But because Singapore was so undeveloped, and at that time, any young man or young woman after finishing the O levels will look for gainful employment, first in the white collar area, working in the bank or working in a nice office. And it's of the last resort. That means when you cannot find any job in the country, then you are willing to be a teacher. So when you don't get good teachers in your educational system, you don't produce good students. So education was very bad in those days. Then when we talk about health, we have serious health challenges, public health. Every kind of disease you experience, we have experienced that. There was malaria, there was polio, there was chicken pox, smallpox, cholera, tuberculosis, and so every kind of diseases we face in Singapore. And there was a big challenge because infant mortality rate was very high. Babies don't make it to 1 year old. So it was very common in those days. So health was very bad. Today, Singapore experienced one of the best healthcare system in the world. In fact, it's a medical center in the world. People from all over the world come to Singapore for medical services and treatment, including many of those who are able to from Africa. They come regularly, and we allow everyone to come. The government have very good general hospitals, and there are also private hospitals. And the same way today we have one of the best educational systems in the world. Singapore is considered an educational center, and people bring their kids. Some of them, the mother bring their kids for primary school, secondary school, and then college, university, as well as postgraduate, all the way to doctoral programs. Singapore is now an educational center and a medical center in the world. Housing was a big problem in those days. There was such a major shortage of housing. Most people live in thatched huts. That means one thatched hut, sometimes there are two families there. They just put a divider right through it and one room for the entire family. And no modern sanitation, all right? Sometimes there's open sewer, and of course a village, there's one public toilet and a well. Sometimes if they are lucky, there's a pipe, you have pipe water. That whole pipe, standing pipe, is shared by all the families in that village. So housing was a very desperate situation. So we were determined to take care of housing. We dream about a day when every Singaporean can live in a modern home, something that he or she can afford. Today, we were able to realize that goal. Every Singaporean is guaranteed to have a home that is affordable. And this program of affordable public housing is something that is sustainable from one generation to another. Today, over 90% of Singaporeans live in public housing, modern, with all the modern facilities, electricity that is reliable, and quality electricity. We don't have blackouts or brownouts. We cannot even tolerate, 3 minutes of blackout a year. There is no such thing as blackout in Singapore. Singapore today, we have electricity installed, over 12,000 megawatts of electricity with 75% reserve capacity. So with smart grid, there's no such thing as blackout in any area in Singapore. Plus, our industries cannot tolerate blackout because some industries depend on very reliable, consistent electricity. So all the modern facilities are found in the home. High-speed fiber optic is right at your door. Water, constant, you have pressure, and then removal of garbage, sanitation. And every Singaporean now not only live in a modern home, but they also own it. Now, about 10% go live in a private development. They can live, but the private homes in Singapore, built by private developers, are on an average 3 times the price of homes from the private housing provided by the government. Our housing today is high quality. In many urban cities, like you go to New York, London, a public house or public apartment is always, associated with urban slum, where it's dirty, there's drugs, there's crime, things are broken down, but not in Singapore. In Singapore, they are as clean and nice